The Gunner King, chat. E România, direct, normal, că se vorbește vreodată de noi de bine. Noi avem una Gunner King, Gunners. Numai de rău se vorbește, frate. Numai de rău se vorbește de noi, ești nebun?
Post-World War I Romania, a regional powerhouse at its territorial apex, boasting a stable economy and an abundance of valuable resources like gold, metal, and oil. Businesses were booming, the peasants were repaid for their bravery with their promised plots of land. Everyone was happy, until its king, Carol II, ruined everything.
De ce? Că dădea gun?
Egomaniacal, incompetent,
La cine dădea gun, vere? La God?
and sex
Big
driven,
Diddy got
Carol II
bitches.
came to be known as the worst king in Romania's history. But
Worst
how
king.
did one man single-handedly destroy an entire nation, as well as his entire family's reputation? That and more coming up.
Certified Lover Boy.
Ferdinand I of Hohenzollern.
Parere Korn și top 3 banduri.
Hard as fuck Korn. Top 3 banduri. Bă, o să fie mai controversată părerea mea top 3 bands. În primul și în primul rând. Se poate numi bandă. Se poate numi, dacă e un band totuși, chiar dacă numele este după un singur om. Marilyn Manson, top. Metallica, ce mai? Children of Bodom, ascultam când eram mic. Bullet for My Valentine. Skillet, mama, așa mai alternativ, mai alt. E Skillet alt, cred că e, nu? Slipknot, ascultam multe când eram mic. Mamă, îmi plăcea Rob Zombie, ați auzit vreodată de Rob Zombie? Rob Zombie, dacă nu mă înșel, a fost scenaristul la filmele Halloween sau la unul dintre filme. Nu, l-a jucat pe Michael Myers, cred că l-a jucat Rob Zombie. 3 Days Grace, da, Hard as Fuck, of course. Green Day, sunt multe, bro, nu, e...
Sigmaringen and Queen Marie of Edinburgh, Carol II had the typical high-end bougie upbringing befitting of a royal heir. Cultured, intelligent, energetic, and fluent in many languages, he was taught by one of Romania's greatest historians and obtained all military ranks. Carol was perfectly groomed and equipped to carry on his family's legacy and succeed as king. But he had other plans. He believed that Romania, like all other countries, was destined to become a republic. So, why should he be hindered to live life as he saw fit? How many years would he be left with absolute power before the peasants revolted and put some schmuck in charge? 6, 7? Why spend it on doing...
E video de sataniști asta, 6-7, e de sataniști. 6-7 este satanic.
Boring paperwork instead of partying it up if he was destined to follow the same fate as the King of France. And, oh boy, party he did. Now, Carol was a man of many vices. Gambling, alcohol, stinginess. Hell, if fentanyl would have been invented in his time, he'd be the first of the Walking Dead. But above all else, he was really horny. His sex drive was off the charts. If it had 2 legs and a hole, you know Carol was gonna stick it in. Legend has it that he was so formidable in bed, he was the only man ever to satisfy the Crow. The Crow was Romania's first ever goth OnlyFans e-girl. Wearing all black 19th was the only man ever to satisfy the Crow. The Crow was Romania's first ever goth OnlyFans e-girl. Wearing all black 1930s equivalent of emo attire, she roamed the streets of Bucharest, high on life and anything she could get her hands on, whilst satisfying the gentlemen of Romania in ways their wives never could. The Crow would go through more men than Bonnie Blue in her entire career in a single night, and walk away as if nothing
legendă e asta?
Happened. But one chilly Bucharest evening, after she was finishing up her shift around town, a black car pulled up to her. Fă, vino aici. A black car pulled up to her. Fă, vino aici, said the mysterious driver. She came over and got into the car. The two drove away into the night. But as they drove down the streets of Bucharest, the light of the street lamps shined over the mysterious driver's face, revealing that he was King Carol. The Crow might have been a seasoned expert in her trade, but
bro.
Carol II was a veteran degenerate. According to eyewitnesses, after the king was done with her, the Crow would have to be carried out of his bedroom drooling and half unconscious. A regular Tuesday evening for Romania's royal court. Mind you, he was married. As you can imagine, these types of antics were
Dar se vorbește despre ăsta, ești nebun, zici că e King Von în Prime.
not very fondly discussed over the dinner table. During World War I, Carol wanted nothing to do with the war. So, like any self-respecting king, he deserted the military, fled the country to Odessa, Ukraine, and secretly married a woman named Ioana Lambrino, nicknamed Zizi, which completely humiliated the Romanian royal dynasty. Carol returned to Romania in disgrace, where he was scolded by his father and pressured by the royal house to immediately annul the marriage. Eventually, the Ilfov tribunal stepped in and he formally did so. But the two lovers kept living together and continued their relationship until 1919, when Carol answered the call to arms. The Hungarians were throwing another hissy fit, so he had to kick them out of the country. During the counter-offensive, a second Carol-related scandal hit the royal house, when it was discovered that his pull-out game was weak and Zizi was pregnant.
Pull-out game weak, he crazy, bro.
Everyone. Carol took responsibility for the pregnancy.
I did it because I liked it. Hell, I loved it.
Hundreds of thousands dying on the front.
Bă, ce bine ai făcut videoclipul ăsta.
Not my problem. So he packed his stuff yet again and gave up on the throne for a second time. After the war was over, Carol was placed under house arrest in a monastery. There, the royal family tried a different approach by preying on Carol's romantic predispositions, organizing parties, ceremonies, and private sessions, including one with Carol's ex and other baby mama, Marie Martini, in order to tempt the young prince and make him forget all about Zizi. Carol was actually Snow Bunny mind-controlled to retract his resignation and annul his marriage with Zizi. To forget about all this chaos, Carol went on a publicly funded detoxing world trip and ended up in Switzerland. His mother hooked him up with Princess Helen of Greece and Denmark. The two got married, moved into the royal palace in Sinaia, where their son and future king, Michael I, was born. It seemed as if Carol had managed to settle with Helen after all these years of partying and whoring around. However, he became increasingly more infuriated.
Bro, neironic, ce-ați alege? Să aveți o casă așa pe vechi, gen așa, uite, regală, cu pereții roșii, cu tapet, cu tablouri de astea, cu ornamente pe la uși. Ce-ați alege? Asta sau o casă de-asta modernă, simplă? Eu all day aș alege asta. All day and night. Nici măcar să nu fie palat, bro. Să fie o casă normală, dar să fie gen amenajată așa și să fie în stilul ăsta. Renaissance sau ce stil e ăsta?
With the role of other politicians. He even began seeing his mother, Queen Marie, as more of a rival to the throne than, his mother. These frustrations led him to meeting Elena Lupescu.
Bro, nu, dar, bă, mă uit acum cu Diana la un serial Homeland, m-am tot zis. Și e vorba de CIA, de FBI, de președinție din White House, whatever. Și bă, ăia numai în locuri de-astea stau. Numai în camere de-astea cu biblioteci de-astea vechi, foarte aristocratice, așa. Mă jur că e film. E film să ai așa ceva. Sau să ai o casă de-aia pe vechi, așa, știi ce zic? Gen ca un fel de cottage house, numai că, bă, să fie amenajată de-aia cu ferestre imense, cu draperii din alea puse așa, ca o cortină. Frumos rău, bă, frumos rău. Adică dacă eu aș avea, de exemplu, 20 de milioane de euro acum și de dat pe o casă, clar aș alege-o de aia.
The controversial figure. She had a reputation amongst men as a vulgar, cunning, and indecent woman, able to charm anyone and satisfy their darkest
văzut că ai pus pe story că ai făcut poză cu el.
And worst of all, she was a Jew.
Dream.
You are Jewish?
Yes.
You are Jewish?
Yes.
Fine, no problem.
An unforgiving sin in the rapidly anti-Semitic interwar Romania. When Carol began expressing romantic interest towards her, Nobody batted an eye. I mean, it's Carol after all. Except for his parents, who were concerned that he was going to make another happy little accident. So they tried to send him abroad yet again. Initially, Carol tried to dodge this trip, simulating a horse accident and even shooting himself in the leg. But he couldn't escape his
Hey, yo, Cișcă Rămis, thank you so much, bine ai revenit. Thank you.
Responsibilities. Immediately upon leaving the country, he met up with Elena, moved with her to Italy, and sent a letter to his parents, giving up his role as the heir to the throne for a third time. In his absence, his 5-year-old, Michael, became the successor to the throne, and he would have to lock in quickly because...
Bro, îți dai seama de la 5 ani să fii succesor la tron?
His grandfather, King Ferdinand, would die of colon cancer in 1927.
Îți dai seama dacă acum un copil de 5 ani ar deveni rege, ce-ar zice? Roblox gratis pentru toată lumea. Vreau cele mai șmechere brainrot-uri pe stilă brainrot.
Because his grandfather, King Ferdinand, would die of
6-7, nu te mai saluți cu hello, te saluți cu 6-7.
Cancer in 1927, possibly aggravated by how much of a pain in the ass Carol was. Since you couldn't entrust the fate of a medium-sized
Târgu Mureș. Ce înseamnă asta? Spitale aparținând Ministerului de Război. Ui, acolo dita e spitalul la noi, ești nebun?
country to a preschooler, a regency was formed to tackle the king's royal and administrative duties. Elsewhere, the delicate power balance with the Romanian government also began to falter due to Carol II abandoning his succession. Politicians furiously debated the role and effectiveness of the regency and whether they should support Carol's potential return and ascension to the throne. Factor in an unstable economy, the Great Depression, crashing markets across the globe, and a few fascist lunatics carrying out political assassinations, and you could say Romania was in a bit of a pickle. But that was of no concern to Carol. He was out in Paris sipping on the finest of wine with his Jewish goddess.
You need to do something queer and Jewish soon.
It's been a little too long since you've done something queer and Jewish.
In 1930, Carol returned to Romania after receiving short of 1 million letters begging him to do so, and officially crowned himself as king. First up, he replaced the regency. In their place, a new advisory group was formed and filled with his own loyal cronies, which would be known as the Camarilla, and conveniently included Elena Lupescu as well. Carol was also jealous of his mother's influence, so he forbade her from talking to political people or carrying out public activities. Not wanting to put up with her ungrateful son's bullshit, she moved into her manor on the Black Sea, basically exiling herself. Valid crash out, to be honest.
Mă, Muce, hai jos de acolo, băi! Minune din nădrage te călărești pe Sfânta Biserică. Hai jos de acolo, mă, prințule!
Mai prins? Îi prins?
El e omul paiangă, mă!
Gone was the young Carol who believed in republics and the will of the people. He was king, but he felt powerless in comparison to the national government. He hated political parties, me as fuck, and wanted all-exclusive and legislative power to himself.
E sârb, ok, și a stat în România. Așa
for the rest of his reign,
ori astea, o Bulgaria, Serbia, Ungaria, stă în Cluj,
he focused his attention on whatever tricks he could pull in order to sabotage his political rivals. Throughout his reign, Carol systematically and constantly undermined Romania's political parties, viewing the democratic system as a hindrance to his autocratic ambitions. He first weakened parliament by frequently appointing minority governments or those led by dissident factions, ensuring cabinet members were loyal to the throne rather than their party leaders. This tactic, combined with his reliance on the Camarilla, helped fracture the traditional political establishment. However, amidst this power struggle, another political movement was gaining momentum, a more sinister one than anyone could have imagined. The Legion of Archangel Michael, aka the Iron Guard, started off as a weird student club full of nerds and LARPers. Being founded in the late 20s, mainly concerned itself over Jew-hating and Romanians being the greatest thing since sliced bread. But over the years, the movement evolved into a dangerous paramilitary group. Other than hating on the Jews, they also hated the commies, democracy, capitalism, free speech, and anything one would even remotely consider fun. They were, however, pro-God, essentially just Nazis who loved Jesus.
They drinking and smoking in a public park.
As their movement grew, they went on to do a bunch of terrorism and murder whenever their worldview was put into question. When someone disagreed with their retarded ideology, or if they walked around without a foreskin. And that's why I believe you're all violent crybabies throwing temper tantrums, and your ideology is extremist, delusional dog shit. Oh, and your captain wants to bang his sister. Now, you might think that I'm getting smoked right now, but watch as I turn this debate into my favor by using facts and logic. In 1933, Liberal Prime Minister Ion Gheorghe Duca was gunned down Tupac style at the train station in Sinaia. On his way back from a meeting with the king, Carol was outraged, revolted, and overcome with grief when he heard the news. Or was he? As it turns out, Carol got hold of a note detailing the assassination plot days before it was to be carried out, but told the police chief to hold the note in the office and don't send it further. The killers even rode the same goddamn train as Duca on his way to Sinaia, and barely any measures were taken to protect him. In fact, this is one of the reasons why Carol wasn't as drastic against the Iron Guard as people would have hoped. Quite the contrary, the two bonded quickly over common viewpoints like abolishing democracy and political parties, totalitarianism, the whole new man bullshit, love for God and Jesus, and of course, anti-Semitism. Although Carol was more of a performative anti-Semite, as he was still clapping Jewish cheeks regularly. However, Carol was clever enough to keep his rhetoric more moderate and not go full Christian Nazi. He may have sympathized with and bankrolled the Iron Guard, but in the end he viewed them as nothing more than a piece of his master plan.
Bă, iDubbbz, așa ca side note, downfall-ul lui iDubbbz trebuie studiat, bro. Downfall-ul lui iDubbbz trebuie studiat, bro. Cât de simplu poți să fii să ajungi în așa hal. Incredibil așa ceva, bă.
Rely on the Iron Guard to cause chaos, which would be blamed on whatever current administration he was trying to undermine. Political parties' approval ratings would crash. The Iron Guard would surely never get into government, so that would leave him to pick up the pieces and become supreme ruler of Romania. To Carol, these pesky legionnaires were nothing more than useful idiots. However, this alliance was short-lived and doomed from the start. The Iron Guard hated him too. I mean, the guy was clapping Jewish cheeks, humping anything that could move, putting all of the country's tax revenue onto red, and regularly doing enough drugs to kill an entire stable of horses. With the
scena asta din Breaking Bad, low-key, chiar a fost tristă, bro. Neironic.
Doing enough drugs to kill an
Bă, ce bun e Breaking Bad-ul. Trebuie să mă uit iarăși.
entire stable of horses. With the Legion growing bigger and more influential, the Guard was no longer a useful pawn for Carol, but a massive political threat that garnered significant support right before the crucial 1937 general elections. Not that it was difficult to get the average Romanian on board with your ideas. Can we expect Romania to have a rapid motorway like the Germans in the near future? I hate Jews. Following the elections, none of the three main political factions won a parliamentary majority. This was a disaster for anyone not named Carol, who was allowed to appoint the next prime minister himself, Octavian Goga, president of the other fascist party, who was 4th place in the elections. However, big shocker, the two fascist parties planned to form a coalition. In response, Goga's government lasted only a month and was ousted by Carol, who created his own faction and put them, aka himself, in charge. In one fell swoop, he got rid of his main political competitors, abolished the 1923 Constitution, and gave even more executive and legislative power to himself.
I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it.
Alas, the master plan was a success, and Carol II officially became Romania's first dictator. And he couldn't have done it without his most formidable ally, liberal and fighting. Carol began his authoritarian antics by delivering a final blow to political parties. They were all made illegal. except for one, his own, now going by the name of the Nation's Party. Only his party delegates were allowed to run for elections, with Kirill having the final say. Of course, one can't run a dictatorship without a huge cult of personality dedicated to him. Kirill had total control over the press and radio and created the Ministry of National Propaganda in order to control the narrative and enhance his aura. He was a true patriot, a messiah, a wise captain steering the ship of national revival. Censorship was severely dialed up, and free speech was appropriately dialed down. Public gatherings of any kind were prohibited, and publications were maintaining the nationwide echo chamber by only publishing praises towards the king, with no criticism allowed. And finally, who can forget his anti-Semitic laws, revoking citizenship of many Jews and legalizing racial discrimination. But not against Lupescu, of course. She was one of the good ones. His dictatorship can be not against Lupescu, of course. She was one of the good ones. His dictatorship can be accurately described as an unfocused improv session, lacking a coherent strategy to save the country or his throne. His totalitarian antics felt weak and disingenuous, as if he was trying to cosplay the Iron Guard, beating them at their own game.
Bro, ăsta știe mimurile, e unul de-a nostru.
Without knowing any of the rules. Speaking of, the Iron Guard only grew more fanatic and influential under the leadership of Captain Corneliu Zela Codreanu. Essentially, a dude that would ride his horse around villages and terrorize the Jews. More riots and political violence broke out, as well as more anti-Semitic witch hunts, and crucially, more public support. One of the Iron Guard's goals was to join the fascist Cool Kids Club, and they even managed to garner international support from none other than their senpai, Hitler himself.
I'm Hitler's top guy. What am I gonna do? Adolf Hitler chose me to lead the revolution.
Hitler really wanted those sweet, juicy oil refineries the country had. So he was in favor of a legion-ruled fascist Romania, which put more pressure on Kirill to take action against Codreanu once and for all. Luckily for him, there was no better opportunity to finally defeat this fascist cancer, with him being supreme ruler and all. He successfully captured and detained the captain, but that just wasn't enough. He wanted to send a message. He then ordered the captain's assassination. And so, in 1938, Codreanu and 13 other legionnaires were taken to a forest and strangled to death. But you know the saying, you kill the man, not the idea. Codreanu's assassination totally backfired. People believed he became a ghost, and many believed they saw him riding his ghost horse still terrorizing the Jews. Overnight, he became a martyr in many people's eyes. The Iron Guard was filled with rage. Under a new captain, Horia Sima, the legionnaires engaged in a constant civil war with the Romanian law enforcement, putting the country in an unenviable position, which was just in time for... The start of World War II caught Romania with its pants down. The country was underprepared, in inner turmoil, and worst of all, completely stranded. Naturally, Kirill opted to do what his forefathers did and opted to stay neutral until he can get his shit together. Sadly, there were no allies to call upon. France got curb stomped by the Nazis, Poland... and Yugoslavia was doing what it does best.
Bizončino. Tebe direktno napravio majmun u zoološkom vrtu. Imaš 20 kvadrata u guzici. Ajde, zaveži, bre. Koliko valjaš kvadrat, brate?
Hungary took over northern Transylvania in its quest to un-Trianon itself. Stalin captured Bessarabia and turned it into a republic, and Bulgaria conquered southern Dobruja, capturing the royal residence in Balchik. As the country was being divided amongst its neighbors, Kirill didn't even attempt to fight. Hell no. Instead, prior to officially ceding the territories, he sold his real estate to some nobility who'd lose his newly acquired villa soon after the new owners came. I mean, he was the king of Romanians after all. In hard times like these, with their backs against the wall, it falls upon mighty men, leaders, to steer the ship or to take accountability for its crash. Kirill, however, did neither of those things, opting instead to do exactly what he had done 15 years ago, going into exile and f***ing off with his mistress while naming his son Michael as the crown successor. But Michael's role was mostly ceremonial. In reality, Carol passed his dictatorship duties to fascist Marshal Ion Antonescu, which was 100 times worse. Where do I even begin with this douche? The ludicrous decision to invade Russia, rampant political assassinations, hundreds of massacres, economic recession, war crimes, and last but not least, Holocaust participation. Good job, Carol. You sure left Romania in great hands. Meanwhile, Carol, the madman, was on a world tour, greatly funded by the Romanian treasury and taxpayer. He quickly packed his bags and whatever he found most valuable from his palace and rode westwards to Yugoslavia. He then took the lavish Orient Express to Italy and France because he was denied asylum in Switzerland. After that, he was detained in Spain, but their dictator didn't want to deal with an exiled king, so he let him illegally cross the border into Portugal. After a quick stop in Cuba, Carol then tried to seek asylum in the USA, but the Americans remember, aren't you the guy who ended democracy in Romania? So they kicked him out as well. He relocated to Mexico for a few years, then moved to Brazil, where he finally married Elena, free from political or royal pressure. They tried to relocate to France again, but Carol's visa was denied, so they decided to settle in Portugal, in a nice oceanside villa, where Carol would live out the rest of his life.
I did not have the occasion to go and visit again the American people.
In 1953, Carol died after a heart attack and was buried in Lisbon. All of his wealth he stole from the country was inherited by Elena, with not a cent ever to be returned to Romania. Neither representatives of the Romanian communist regime nor members of the Romanian royal family bothered to show up. Just like Carol didn't bother to write his will, resulting in a contested to show up. Just like Carol didn't bother to write his will, resulting in a contested succession trial, won in the end by Carol's son Wojciech. In 2003, Carol's remains were returned and reburied in Romania. King Michael did not attend his deadbeat dad's burial ceremony as a final middle finger for all the bullshit he put him and his country through. And that was the story of Romania's and arguably the world's worst king. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button.
Doamne, frate. Bă, ești nebun, dar numai la rele, bă, suntem. Numai la rele suntem primii. Oricum, bun rău videoclipul ăsta, mi-a plăcut foarte informativ și foarte fun to watch.